Have you ever looked at someone you thought you knew, truly knew, and realized they were a complete stranger? A terrifying, manipulative stranger hiding behind a mask of normalcy? What if that person was your husband, the father of your child? And what if this realization unfolded in the most public, humiliating way possible, right in front of your entire family? Today, we're delving into a story that starts with a seemingly idyllic Thanksgiving dinner, only to unravel into a chilling tale of betrayal, resilience, and the unexpected power of truth. This isn't just about one woman's struggle. It's a stark reminder of the hidden battles many face and the profound strength that can emerge from the most vulnerable places. Imagine the scene. A golden brown turkey graces the dining room table, candlelight flickers, and the air is thick with the scent of roasted herbs and simmering cranberry sauce. It's Thanksgiving, a day universally associated with warmth, gratitude, and familial harmony. But in the elegant home of Zoe and Robert, the festive veneer was about to shatter, revealing the icy truth beneath. This was no ordinary family gathering. It was a carefully constructed stage for Robert's ultimate act of cruelty. Zoe sat beside her 9-year-old daughter, Emma, the comfort of their home suddenly feeling like a prison. Robert, her husband, stood up, a wine glass trembling in his hand. His face, flushed with alcohol and a potent cocktail of anger, was a prelude to the storm. He wasn't about to give a heartfelt toast. No, his words were sharpened blades, aimed directly at Zoe, intended to slice through her dignity and expose her to what he perceived as her true, worthless self. "You want to know what I'm thankful for this year?" he declared, his voice cutting through the pleasantries, instantly silencing the room. The question hung in the air, loaded with a menacing undertone that only Zoe, and perhaps subconsciously Emma, could truly feel. Then came the blow. "I'm thankful that I finally see my wife for what she really is." Think about that moment. The sudden, suffocating silence, broken only by the frantic pounding of Zoe's own heart. 20 pairs of eyes, family, friends, loved ones, all turning towards her. Not in support, but in judgment, in uncomfortable curiosity, fueled by Robert's venomous narrative. This wasn't just humiliation. This was psychological warfare, designed to isolate, demean, and destroy her in front of everyone who mattered. It's a common tactic in abusive relationships, known as public shaming, where the abuser seeks to control the narrative, undermine the victim's credibility, and ensure that their carefully crafted public image remains untarnished by any potential dissent. The victim is not just attacked, but put on trial by proxy, forced to endure the silent accusations of an audience. Zoe's blood turned to ice. Beside her, Emma, her usually lively daughter, sat frozen, her small hands clutching a tablet. The unspoken fear, the years of private cruelty suddenly threatened to spill into the open, irrevocably altering the carefully maintained facade of their family life. Robert's mother, Patricia, a woman of impeccable composure, raised an eyebrow, a subtle gesture that spoke volumes of her long-standing tolerance, perhaps even complicity in her son's behavior. His brothers and their wives exchanged uncomfortable glances, caught between loyalty to Robert and the obvious discomfort of witnessing such a public spectacle. This is the insidious nature of familial abuse. It often forces family members into uncomfortable positions where speaking up can disrupt the family dynamic, yet remaining silent feels like condoning the cruelty. "Robert, please sit down," Zoe whispered, her voice barely audible, choked by the rising panic. But Robert, fueled by alcohol and rage, was past the point of reason. "No, Zoe, everyone needs to hear this." His face was flushed, his words slurred but clear in their malicious intent. "My wife here thinks she's so perfect, goes to her little marketing job, acts like she's contributing something meaningful to this family. But you know what? She's worthless. Worthless." The word hung in the quiet room, a chilling echo against the rhythmic tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. This is gaslighting in its rawest, most public form. Robert wasn't just criticizing Zoe. He was systematically attempting to dismantle her sense of self-worth, her professional accomplishments, her very identity as a contributing member of their family. And he was doing it in a way designed to make her internalize this self-doubt, to believe the lie that she was, indeed, nothing. It was in that harrowing silence that Zoe noticed something crucial, something that would later prove to be their salvation. Emma's grip on her tablet had tightened, and a small red recording light glowed. Her heart raced as the terrifying realization dawned. Emma had been recording. This wasn't just a child playing with her device. This was a quiet act of rebellion, a silent testament to a child's intuitive understanding of injustice and a burgeoning bravery far beyond her years. It speaks volumes about the instinctual protective measures children develop in abusive environments, an almost primal need to document, to understand, to find a way to make it stop. "She's worthless," Robert continued, his voice growing louder, more contemptuous. "A pathetic excuse for a wife and mother. Emma would be better off without her poisoning her mind with weakness." This is where the abuse escalates, not just against Zoe, but weaponized against their daughter. He was telling Emma that her own mother was a source of poison, of weakness. This rhetoric is designed to alienate a child from a protective parent, to break the fundamental bond of trust and love. It's a classic move by narcissistic abusers. Isolate the victim, demonize them to their children, and control the narrative. Even Patricia, Robert's mother, finally interjected, "That's enough." But Robert, now completely unhinged, ignored her. "You think you can just sit there looking innocent, Zoe? You think I don't know what you've been up to? Checking my phone, going through my things like some desperate housewife." He stepped closer, the smell of bourbon heavy on his breath. "I should have divorced you years ago." The public accusations were a terrifying escalation, a stark contrast to his usual private cruelty. This wasn't just about winning an argument, it was about total annihilation. He was attempting to justify his own projected behavior by accusing her of it, a common form of deflection. Zoe's hands shook uncontrollably. Years of private abuse, manipulation, and control over every aspect of her life had conditioned her to endure, to internalize the blame. But this public destruction of her dignity, this shredding of her very being in front of her family, felt like dying while still breathing. It's a feeling many victims of long-term abuse describe, a spiritual death long before a physical one. "Daddy, stop." Emma's small voice, barely a whisper, cut through the escalating tirade. This simple plea from a 9-year-old represented a profound challenge to Robert's absolute authority. "Don't tell me what to do, Emma," Robert snapped, his eyes wild, completely out of control. "This is between me and your mother. Maybe it's time you learned the truth about the woman who raised you, how she spies on me, doesn't trust me, makes my life hell every single day." He was now turning his accusations directly towards Emma, attempting to recruit her into his distorted reality. His sister-in-law covered her teenage daughter's ears, and his brother looked like he wanted to disappear, a testament to the palpable discomfort and fear he was instilling in everyone present. The toxic ripple effect of abuse extends far beyond the direct victim, touching everyone in its periphery. But Robert wasn't done. He paced like a predator, asserting his perceived dominance. "I work my tail off to provide for this family, and what do I get? A wife who questions every dollar I spend, who acts like she deserves respect she hasn't earned." He leaned down, his face inches from Zoe's, his words a venomous whisper. "You want to know what I think of you, Zoe? You're nothing. You hear me? Nothing." Those words, "you're nothing," hit Zoe like physical blows. They were the culmination of years of psychological conditioning designed to strip her of any self-worth, to make her feel utterly dependent and powerless. This is the core of abusive control, to convince the victim that they are so fundamentally flawed, so utterly worthless that no one else would ever want them, leaving them trapped. This public destruction of her dignity, after years of private torment, was a crushing weight. "Robert, that's your wife," Patricia said firmly, finally stepping in, "the mother of your child." But Robert only laughed bitterly. "Some mother? Emma, tell everyone how Mommy cries herself to sleep every night. Tell them how she jumps every time I walk into a room because she knows she's disappointed me again." Emma's face had gone completely white, yet her small hand remained steady, the recording light still glowing. Zoe wanted to tell her to stop, to shield her from this nightmare, but something in Emma's determined expression held her back. It was a silent, powerful signal. This child understood the gravity of the situation, and she was fighting back in the only way she knew how. This often happens in abusive households. Children, out of love and a deep sense of injustice, step into roles far beyond their years, becoming protectors or observers, silently bearing witness. "I've wasted the best years of my life on this woman," Robert declared, pacing around the table. "But that's about to change real soon. Things are going to be very different in this house." The veiled threat, the chilling promise of future control, sent a shiver down Zoe's spine. Her mind raced with all the times he'd mentioned taking Emma away, hinted that Zoe wasn't fit to be a mother. This is the constant low-level terror that victims live with. The knowledge that the abuser's promises of retaliation are not idle threats, but carefully orchestrated plans. "Robert, please," Zoe finally managed, her voice cracking. "Not in front of Emma." Robert's laugh was cruel. "Oh, now you care about Emma. Where was that concern when you were turning her against me? When you were teaching her to be weak, just like you?" This projection, accusing Zoe of his own manipulative tactics, is a hallmark of narcissistic abuse. It's designed to confuse, to divert blame, and to make the victim doubt their own reality. Then, an unexpected seismic shift. Emma stood up, her tablet still recording. Her small voice, though quiet, was clear and resolute. "My mom isn't weak." The room fell into a dead silence more profound than before. Robert's face darkened as he stared at his daughter. "What did you say?" he demanded. "I said, my mom isn't weak," Emma repeated, her voice small but unwavering. "And you're being mean to her." For a terrifying moment, Robert's hand shot out, and Zoe braced herself for the unthinkable. But instead, he pointed a trembling finger at Emma. "Go to your room now." "No," Emma said, a single defiant word that hung in the air like a challenge. Zoe had never seen Emma defy her father before, and neither had Robert. His face cycled through shock, anger, and then, surprisingly, a flicker of fear. This 9-year-old girl, often seen as a secondary victim, had just become the unexpected hero, the catalyst for change. Her courage, born from a deep love for her mother, broke through the years of fear and silence. "What did you say to me?" Robert snarled. Emma looked directly at him, her tablet still held steady. "I said, no, Daddy, I'm not leaving Mom alone with you when you're acting like this." Patricia, Robert's mother, stared at Emma, a look of nascent pride beginning to replace her shock. Robert's brother, Tom, finally found his voice. "Maybe we should all just calm down." But Robert snapped him into silence. "Shut up, Tom. This is my house, my family, and my rules." And then Emma, with a quiet wisdom that belied her age, delivered another powerful blow. "Then maybe your rules need to change." In that moment, Zoe watched her husband's face drain of color. Seeing her 9-year-old daughter stand up to him with more courage than Zoe had shown in years, something shifted inside her. The tablet continued to record, a silent witness to a truth that was finally breaking through. This wasn't just a family dinner, it was a battleground, and the lines for a war Zoe hadn't known was coming were being drawn. But as she looked at Emma's determined face, and then at the shocked expressions around the dining room table, she realized this night wasn't ending. It was just beginning. It was the moment Zoe realized she wasn't alone, and that the seeds of courage had been quietly growing in the most unexpected of places. This profound shift in the power dynamic, initiated by a child, is a powerful reminder that sometimes the smallest voices carry the loudest truths. After Robert finally stormed out, retreating to the sanctuary of his office and the comfort of more bourbon, and his family left in uncomfortable silence, Zoe and Emma were left alone amidst the wreckage of their Thanksgiving dinner. The golden turkey had grown cold, the gravy congealed on abandoned plates, a poignant symbol of the feast that had turned so bitter. For 20 long minutes, Emma hadn't uttered a word, simply clutching her tablet as if it contained the secrets of the universe. This silence, after the explosive confrontation, was heavy, pregnant with unspoken fears and burgeoning possibilities. Emma, sweetie, are you okay? Zoe's voice was gentle, filled with an apprehension she couldn't hide. She reached out to touch her daughter's shoulder, but Emma pulled away slightly, her focus absolute. Mom, I need to show you something. Her voice was serious, mature beyond her years, tightening Zoe's chest. But you have to promise not to get scared. The request was unsettling, hinting at a truth far darker than Zoe could imagine. Emma glanced towards the stairs, listening for any sign of her father. Robert had locked himself in his office, no doubt drowning his fury in bourbon, plotting his next move to punish them both for the dinner disaster. "I've been recording Daddy," Emma said simply, her words hitting Zoe like a bucket of ice water. "What?" Zoe gasped, disbelieving. "For 3 months. Every time he's mean to you, every time he says those things, every time he makes you cry." Emma's small fingers moved across the tablet screen, navigating through a digital archive of pain. "I have hours of recordings, Mom." Zoe's heart pounded. "Emma, why would you? How did you?" She struggled for words. Emma, calmer than Zoe could ever hope to be, explained, "Remember when you bought me this tablet for my birthday? You showed me how to use the recording app for school projects." A flicker of a smile, grim and knowing, crossed her face. "I started using it when Daddy would yell at you late at night. I thought maybe if I recorded it, I could show someone and they would make him stop." Zoe stared at her 9-year-old daughter, this brave, observant little person who had been protecting her, silently fighting a battle Zoe didn't even know existed, while Zoe herself had been lost in a fog of fear and self-doubt. It was a profound realization of a child's incredible resilience and capacity for empathy. Children in abusive households often become hypervigilant, developing coping mechanisms that involve observation and quiet documentation, driven by an inherent need for safety and justice, especially for the parent they see as vulnerable. "Oh, Emma," Zoe whispered, tears stinging her eyes. "Do you want to see?" Emma nodded. Zoe wasn't sure she could handle watching herself being torn apart, hearing her own weakness played back, but she knew she had to. Emma tapped the screen, and suddenly Zoe's own voice filled the living room, weak, pleading, apologetic. "Robert, please, I was just asking about the credit card statement." Then Robert's voice, cold and cutting. "You don't ask me about money, Zoe. You don't question how I spend what I earn. You want to know where that money went? It went to pay for things you can't even understand, to handle problems you're too stupid to deal with." Emma paused the recording. This was from last Tuesday night after I went to bed. Zoe remembered that night vividly. She had found a mysterious $2,000 charge from a restaurant she'd never heard of. When she dared to ask Robert, he'd exploded, accusing her of paranoia and control. And in her conditioned response, Zoe had apologized. Actually apologized for asking a reasonable question about their joint account. This is the insidious dance of gaslighting. The victim is systematically made to doubt their own sanity, their own perception of reality, until they apologize for simply existing or asserting a boundary. "There's more, Mom." Emma scrolled through a long list of audio files. August 15th, September 3rd, September 20th, October 12th. The list stretched on, each date a painful reminder of a night when Robert had torn Zoe down and her daughter had been there, silently recording it all. "Emma, this is—" Zoe couldn't find the words to express the magnitude of what her daughter had done, the depth of her silent suffering and strength. "I know it's bad to spy on people," Emma said quickly, sensing her mother's overwhelm, "but Daddy was hurting you and you never fought back. You just took it, and I was scared he was going to make you disappear." The phrase, "make me disappear," sent a chill down Zoe's spine. "Make me disappear?" she echoed. Emma nodded seriously. "Like Tommy's mom at school. His dad made her go away, and now Tommy only sees her on weekends. Daddy says things about sending you away sometimes when he thinks I can't hear." This was a terrifying revelation. Robert had never explicitly threatened to leave Zoe or take Emma away, but there had been hints, veiled comments about how Emma would be better off with just him, how Zoe was holding both of them back. Emma's innocent words were revealing the true, darker intentions beneath Robert's everyday cruelty. These subtle threats, often dismissed as just anger, are part of the coercive control, planting seeds of fear and uncertainty. Play another one, Zoe said quietly, needing to hear more, to understand the full scope of her daughter's brave vigil. Emma tapped on a file from just last week. This time, the recording quality was better. She must have gotten closer. Robert's voice, cutting and contemptuous. "You're pathetic, Zoe. You know that. A grown woman who can't handle basic responsibilities. Emma's going to grow up thinking this is normal, thinking it's okay to be weak like you are." Zoe's recorded voice, barely audible in response. "I'm trying my best, Robert." His brutal reply, "Your best is garbage. Your best is why this house is always a mess. Why Emma doesn't respect me. Why nothing in our lives works the way it should. You poison everything you touch." Zoe had to close her eyes. Hearing it played back, knowing Emma had listened to her father systematically destroy her mother night after night, was almost unbearable. The truth, in this raw, unedited form, was painful but also liberating. It validated Zoe's experience, confirming that what she had endured was not a figment of her imagination, but a brutal reality. "Mom," Emma said softly, pulling Zoe back to the present, "you're not weak, and you're not pathetic. Daddy's wrong about everything." Zoe pulled her daughter into a tight hug, holding this brave little girl who had been fighting a battle Zoe didn't even know existed. "Why didn't you tell me about the recordings before?" Zoe whispered. "I was waiting for the right time," Emma replied, pulling back to look at her mother. "And I was scared you might make me delete them. But after tonight, after what he did at dinner in front of everyone, I knew I had to show you." Emma's intuitive timing, her understanding of the gravity of the situation, was remarkable. "How many people do you think believed him tonight?" Zoe asked, needing some reassurance. Emma considered this seriously. "Grandma Patricia looked really mad at Daddy, and Uncle Tom looked sick. I don't think anyone believed the things he said about you. That was something, at least. Robert's family had witnessed him at his worst, had been given a glimpse into the verbal abuse Zoe had been enduring in private for years. This public exposure, though agonizing, was a crucial first step towards dismantling Robert's carefully constructed facade. "There's something else, Mom." Emma's voice dropped to a whisper, her eyes wide with fear. "I recorded something else today before dinner when Daddy was on the phone in his office." Zoe's blood ran cold. "What kind of phone call?" "He was talking to someone about money and about making you go away permanently." Emma's eyes were now wide and scared. "He said he was almost ready to end this marriage and that soon you wouldn't be a problem anymore." The room felt like it was spinning. "Are you sure that's what he said?" Zoe asked, barely able to breathe. Emma nodded, pulling up another audio file. "I was hiding outside his office door. Listen." Robert's voice came through clearly, speaking to someone on the phone. "The paperwork will be ready next week. Once that's done, Zoe won't have any claim to the house or any of the assets. Emma will stay with me and Zoe will be out of our lives for good." A stranger's voice responded, "What if she fights it?" Robert's chilling reply, "She won't. By the time she realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. I've been setting this up for months." Emma stopped the recording. "Mom, what does that mean?" Zoe felt like she couldn't breathe. Robert had been planning to destroy her, to take Emma away, and Zoe had been completely blind to it, lost in her attempts to save a marriage that was already dead. While she was desperately trying to hold their family together, he was methodically plotting its demise, on his terms, with her utter ruin as the centerpiece. This is the brutal reality of many abusive relationships. While the victim is focused on healing and repairing, the abuser is often meticulously planning their escape and the victim's ultimate downfall. "It means," Zoe said slowly, a newfound clarity in her voice, "that we need to be smarter than your father thinks we are." Emma nodded seriously, her young face set with determination. "What are we going to do?" Zoe looked at her daughter, at her tablet full of damning evidence, at the unwavering resolve in her young eyes. For the first time in years, Zoe didn't feel helpless. She felt a spark, a flicker of something she hadn't known she possessed, a primal urge to fight back. "We're going to fight back." The journey from victim to warrior had just begun, ignited by the quiet courage of a 9-year-old. The next morning, Robert left early for what he called a business meeting, but Zoe, now acutely aware, noticed he took an overnight bag. 3 months of Emma's recordings had sharpened Zoe's perception. She was beginning to recognize the patterns, the subtle tells that had once gone unnoticed. Weekend business trips usually meant he was seeing someone else. "Is Daddy coming back today?" Emma asked, picking at her cereal. "Probably tomorrow," Zoe replied, sitting across from her with her coffee. "Emma, I need to ask you something important. Do you remember where Daddy keeps his papers? Like the important documents in his office?" Emma nodded, her cereal forgotten. "In the big filing cabinet behind his desk, and he has a safe in the closet, but I don't know what's in there." Zoe pressed on. "Has he ever left his office unlocked when he goes away?" "Sometimes he forgets to lock it when he's in a hurry." Emma studied Zoe's face, her own expression serious. "Are we going to look for more evidence?" "Smart girl," Zoe said, a faint smile touching her lips. "Maybe. Would that be okay with you?" Emma, finishing her cereal, stood up. "Mom, if Daddy's planning to take me away from you, then we need to know everything he's planning, right?" "Right," Zoe echoed, the word feeling powerful and resolute. An hour later, they stood outside Robert's office door. He had, indeed, forgotten to lock it in his rush to leave. The room smelled of his cologne and the bourbon he drank every night while working late. It was a space that had always felt forbidden, a sanctuary of Robert's secrets and control. "Okay, here's what we're going to do, Zoe told Emma. "You keep watch at the window for his car, just in case. I'll look through his files. If you see him coming, we leave everything exactly like we found it and get out. Deal?" "Deal," Emma whispered, her eyes bright with a mixture of fear and determination. The filing cabinet was organized in a way that was perfectly Robert. Everything meticulously labeled, controlled, and filed. Zoe started with the section marked Personal and immediately found things that made her stomach drop. Divorce papers, drafted but not yet filed, dated for next week. According to the documents, Robert was claiming Zoe was an unfit mother with mental health issues. He was requesting full custody of Emma and asking that Zoe receive no alimony, citing her unstable behavior and inability to contribute meaningfully to the household. This was the ultimate gaslighting, not just in words, but in official documentation, designed to strip her of everything. "Mom, what's wrong?" Emma had noticed Zoe's ashen face. "Your father is planning to divorce me next week," Zoe said quietly, the words feeling foreign and heavy, "and he's trying to make it look like I'm crazy so he can keep you." Emma's face hardened, an expression that uncomfortably reminded Zoe of Robert's own stubborn resolve. "What else is in there?" she demanded. Zoe kept digging. Financial statements showing accounts she didn't know existed, investment portfolios worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, all in Robert's name only. Credit cards she'd never seen before, with charges for expensive restaurants, jewelry stores, and hotel rooms. This was systematic financial abuse and fraud, a calculated effort to strip her of shared assets and ensure her future dependency or destitution. This level of meticulously planned financial deception is not uncommon in high-conflict divorces, where one partner aims to leave the other with nothing, leveraging their superior financial knowledge and access to accounts. "Emma, come look at this." Zoe held up a credit card statement. "Do you recognize this restaurant, Chez Laurent?" Emma squinted at the paper. "That's where Daddy took me for my birthday dinner last month." "But look at the date on this charge," Zoe noted. The charge was from 2 weeks after Emma's birthday, for 2 dinners and a bottle of champagne. Robert hadn't just taken someone else to their special place. He had desecrated a sacred memory, a moment of shared joy, with his infidelity. "Keep looking, Mom," Emma urged, a newfound maturity in her voice. Zoe found phone records next. Hundreds of calls to the same number over the past 6 months. Text message logs made everything crystal clear. "I can't wait to start our life together without all this drama," one message read. "Once the divorce is final and I have full custody, we can finally be a real family." The response, "I know this is hard, but Zoe doesn't deserve you or Emma. Soon she'll be out of the picture for good." "Mom," Emma was reading over her shoulder, "who is he texting?" Zoe scrolled up to see the contact name, Stephanie M. Someone from his work, I think. Zoe tried to remember if Robert had ever mentioned a Stephanie. He had, actually. His new assistant, who was so much more competent than the last one. Emma frowned. Is she the one he's going to marry after he divorces you? The question, delivered with the same calm logic she used for math homework, hit Zoe like a punch. Her 9-year-old daughter was dissecting her father's affair with chilling clarity. I don't know, sweetie, maybe. Zoe kept digging through the files and found something even worse. Bank statements showing large withdrawals from their joint accounts, money that had been systematically transferred to accounts Zoe couldn't access. Robert had been siphoning off their marital assets, carefully moving them beyond her reach, a calculated act of financial disempowerment. This is a cruel form of economic abuse designed to leave the victim financially destitute and unable to fight back. Mom, look at this. Emma had found a folder marked Emma's Future Plans. Inside were school applications for expensive private boarding schools, all in other states. Emma's name was on every application, with Robert listed as the sole guardian. The applications were dated for next fall. He's planning to send me away, too, Emma said quietly, her voice devoid of emotion, a shield against the shock. What? Zoe gasped. Emma held up a brochure for a boarding school in Virginia. Look at this letter. It was from the admissions office, congratulating Robert on Emma's acceptance and asking for confirmation of enrollment. The letter was dated just last week. Zoe sat down heavily in Robert's desk chair, the weight of his calculated betrayal crushing her. Emma, I think your father has been planning this for a very long time. Planning what exactly? Emma asked, her eyes fixed on the boarding school brochures. To get rid of both of us, divorce me, take you away, and start a new life with this Stephanie person. Emma was quiet for a long moment, processing the enormity of the deception. But what if we don't let him? The question, full of a defiant spark, pulled Zoe back. What do you mean? I mean, what if we take all this evidence and show it to someone who can stop him, like the police or a judge or someone like that? Emma's eyes were bright with an emerging idea. Zoe looked around Robert's office, at all the meticulously documented evidence of his deception. For months, he had been setting up a trap designed to destroy her life and separate her from her daughter. But he had made one crucial mistake. He had underestimated both of them. Emma, how good are you at taking pictures with that tablet? Emma grinned. Really good. Want me to photograph everything? Everything. Every document, every statement, every text message. We're going to build our own case. Emma immediately started taking pictures while Zoe continued searching. In the back of the filing cabinet, Zoe found something that made everything even worse. A folder labeled Zoe M. Medical Records. Inside were forged documents claiming Zoe had been treated for severe depression and anxiety, records from doctors she had never seen, medications she had never taken, therapy sessions that never happened. Robert had created an entire fake medical history to support his claim that Zoe was mentally unfit to be a mother. This was a chilling level of premeditation, an attempt to weaponize mental health stigmas against her. It highlights a dark tactic used by abusers, creating a false narrative of instability to undermine the victim's credibility, particularly in custody battles. Emma, stop taking pictures and come here. Emma looked at the forged medical records with the same serious expression she wore when solving difficult problems at school. These are fake, right? You never went to Dr. Harrison for depression treatment. They're completely fake. But if a judge saw these without knowing the truth, they might believe Daddy that you're crazy and give him custody of me. Emma nodded grimly. That's really smart in a horrible way. Your father is many things, but he's not stupid, Zoe conceded. Emma went back to photographing documents while Zoe tried to process everything they had discovered. Robert hadn't just been planning to leave her. He had been methodically destroying her reputation, stealing their assets, and preparing to take Emma away to start fresh with someone else. But in his meticulous planning, he had also created a paper trail of his own crimes. The forged medical records, the hidden assets, the systematic theft from their joint accounts. It was all documented in his own files. "I think we have enough," Emma announced after an hour of relentless photography. "Want to see something cool I found?" She showed Zoe her tablet. She had organized all the photos into clear folders: financial fraud, forged documents, custody planning, and other woman evidence. "Emma, you're incredible!" Zoe exclaimed, marveling at her daughter's methodical approach. "I learned organization from Daddy," she said with dark humor. "He always says everything should have a proper place and label." Zoe laughed despite everything. "Well, he definitely taught you well." Emma looked around the office one more time. "Mom, are you scared?" "Terrified," Zoe admitted honestly, "but also angry, and anger is better than fear because angry people fight back." Emma nodded solemnly. "What do we do next?" Zoe looked at her daughter, this brave little girl who had been protecting her while Zoe was too broken down to protect herself. "Next, we find someone who can help us make sure your father's plans never work, like a lawyer." "Like a lawyer?" Emma echoed. "And maybe the police too, depending on how serious his crimes are." Emma grinned, and for the first time in months, it was a smile with real joy in it. "I can't wait to see Daddy's face when he realizes we know everything." Neither could Zoe. The silent battle was over. The open war was about to begin. Monday morning, Zoe dropped Emma off at school, then drove straight to the law office her best friend Grace had recommended. Grace, a beacon of unwavering support, had been the only one who had seen through Robert's charm from the beginning. "Zoe, I've been waiting for this call for years," Grace had said when Zoe finally confided everything. "Robert's been controlling you for so long, I was starting to think you'd never wake up." In this friend, the one who saw the subtle signs and held space for the truth, is an invaluable lifeline for victims of abuse. Often, abusers systematically isolate their victims from such supportive networks, making it even harder to escape. The law office was housed in a sleek downtown building, all glass and steel, an environment that initially made Zoe feel small and overwhelmed. But when she met Angela Rodriguez, the formidable divorce attorney Grace had found, Zoe immediately felt a profound sense of relief, less alone. "Mrs. Thompson, I've reviewed the materials you emailed me yesterday," Angela began, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Angela was a small woman, but her presence filled the room with quiet competence and authority. "What you've discovered is quite serious. We're not just talking about divorce here. We're talking about fraud, forgery, and potentially criminal activity." Zoe had sent Emma's meticulously organized photographs ahead of their meeting, displayed on Angela's computer screen. Seeing the damning evidence laid out, concrete and irrefutable, made everything feel more real and simultaneously more terrifying. "Can he really take Emma away from me?" Zoe asked, her voice barely a whisper, the fear still a raw wound. "Not if we do this right," Angela stated, her voice firm and reassuring. "The forged medical records alone could land him in serious legal trouble, but we need to be very careful about how we proceed." Angela leaned forward, her gaze direct. "Tell me about your daughter. How is she handling all of this?" "Better than I am, honestly," Zoe admitted, a wry smile touching her lips. "She's been recording his verbal abuse for months without telling me. She's the one who found most of this evidence." Angela's eyebrows rose, a flicker of surprise and admiration in her sharp eyes. "She recorded him without his knowledge?" "Yes. Is that a problem?" Zoe asked, suddenly fearful. "Actually, it might be our strongest evidence. In this state, one-party consent laws mean Emma's recordings are completely legal. And children's testimony about abuse carries significant weight in custody cases." Relief flooded through Zoe, a wave of hope washing over her. "So, the recordings can be used in court?" "Absolutely," Angela affirmed. "In fact, I'd like to meet Emma if you're comfortable with that. We'll need her testimony, and I want to make sure she's prepared for what might happen." Angela then walked Zoe through the complex legal process. First, they would file for divorce with a request for emergency temporary custody, citing the clear evidence of immediate danger to Emma. The evidence of Robert's financial fraud would support a claim for the majority of their assets, ensuring Zoe wasn't left destitute. The forged medical records and his documented abuse would ensure Zoe retained custody of Emma, painting a clear picture of Robert's manipulative character. This comprehensive legal strategy was crucial in dismantling Robert's carefully constructed plan. "There's something else we should consider," Angela continued, her expression grave. "Some of what your husband has done may be criminal. The forged medical records, the systematic theft of marital assets, the fraud. These could result in criminal charges." "You mean he could go to jail?" Zoe asked, the thought almost inconceivable. "It's possible. I have a contact at the DA's office who specializes in financial crimes. With your permission, I'd like to show him these documents." Zoe thought about Robert's face at Thanksgiving dinner, the cruelty in his voice, the years of manipulation and control. "Yes," she said, her voice steady. "I want him to face consequences for everything he's done." It was a declaration of reclaimed power, a refusal to let his actions go unpunished any longer. After the lawyer meeting, Zoe picked Emma up from school and took her for ice cream, a small ritual of normalcy in their rapidly changing world. Emma had been unusually quiet all day, according to her teacher, and Zoe could see the weight of their situation on her young shoulders. "How did the lawyer meeting go?" Emma asked, picking at her vanilla cone. "Good. She thinks we have a strong case, but Emma, she wants to meet you. Is that okay?" Emma nodded. "Will I have to talk to a judge? Maybe. Would you be scared?" Emma considered this seriously. "A little. But if it means keeping us together and making Daddy stop being mean, then I can be brave." Zoe's heart nearly broke. "You shouldn't have to be brave about this, sweetie. This is grown-up stuff." But Emma, with her characteristic wisdom, countered, "But I'm part of this family too, and if I can help stop Daddy from hurting us, then I want to help." Her words were a powerful testament to a child's inherent desire for justice and protection for those they love. That evening, Angela called with news. "I spoke with Detective Miller at the DA's office. He's very interested in your case. Can you meet with him tomorrow?" "What kind of detective?" Zoe asked, a new layer of apprehension setting in. "Financial crimes and domestic abuse. Based on the evidence you provided, he thinks there's enough for criminal charges, but he wants to interview you and Emma before proceeding." After Zoe hung up, Emma looked at her expectantly. "Police, a detective who handles cases like ours. He wants to talk to us tomorrow." Emma nodded calmly. "Good. Daddy always says people who break the law should face consequences." This seemingly simple statement from a child underscored the core principle of justice that adults often complicate. The next afternoon, Detective Miller met them at Angela's office. He was a kind-faced man in his 50s who immediately put Emma at ease by asking about school and her favorite subjects before discussing the case. This human touch is vital when working with child witnesses, ensuring they feel safe and heard. "Emma, I understand you've been recording your father. That was very smart of you." Detective Miller's voice was gentle. "Can you tell me why you decided to do that?" Emma sat up straighter, her small voice clear and honest. "Because he was hurting my mom's feelings all the time and she was getting sadder and sadder. I thought if someone heard how mean he was being, they could make him stop." "Were you scared when you were recording?" "Yes, but I was more scared of what would happen to Mom if I didn't do something." Detective Miller looked at Zoe with something that might have been admiration. "You've raised a very brave daughter." Then turning to Zoe, he added, "She's braver than I've been, Mrs. Thompson. Abuse victims often feel like they haven't been brave enough, but leaving an abusive situation takes tremendous courage. You're doing that now." His words, acknowledging Zoe's own journey, were a profound source of validation. Detective Miller reviewed the evidence with them, asking detailed questions about the forged medical records and the hidden financial accounts. Emma answered every question clearly and honestly, her composure remarkable. "Based on what I've seen here, I believe we have grounds for criminal charges," Detective Miller said, his voice finally carrying the weight of legal consequence. "Financial fraud, forgery of medical documents, and potentially more depending on what else we discover." "What happens next?" Zoe asked, eager for the path forward. I'll need to investigate further, gather additional evidence, and then present the case to the prosecutor. In the meantime, I strongly recommend you file for that emergency restraining order Angela mentioned." Angela nodded. "We'll file tomorrow. Zoe, I want you and Emma to stay somewhere else tonight. Do you have somewhere safe to go?" "Grace said we could stay with her family." "Good. Pack some things for both of you. And don't tell Robert where you're going." That evening, while Emma packed her favorite clothes and books, Zoe stood in their bedroom, looking at the life she was about to leave behind. The king-size bed where Robert had told her she was worthless. The dresser where he kept cufflinks she had given him for birthdays, when she still believed their marriage could be saved. Each object held a memory, a ghost of a life that had been both real and a cruel illusion. "Mom!" Emma appeared in the doorway with her backpack. "Are you sad about leaving?" Zoe considered her daughter's question deeply. Was she sad? Or was she finally, after years of being diminished and controlled, feeling something that might actually be hope? "No, sweetie, I think I'm relieved." Emma smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile. "Me too. Grace's house is going to be fun." As they loaded their car with enough clothes for a week, Zoe realized Emma was right. For the first time in years, they were going somewhere they would be welcomed, valued, and safe. Robert's carefully laid plans were about to crumble, and they were going to be the ones holding the sledgehammer. The act of leaving an abuser, though terrifying, is often the first step towards reclaiming one's autonomy and future. Robert came home Sunday night in a rage. Emma and Zoe were still safely ensconced at Grace's house, but their neighbors called to tell Zoe about the shouting and the sound of things being thrown. According to Mrs. Patterson next door, Robert had discovered they were gone and had been calling Zoe's name throughout the empty house, his fury echoing in the silence. "He's been drinking," Grace observed, looking out her kitchen window toward the street. "His car's been sitting in your driveway with the engine running for 10 minutes. Emma was doing homework at Grace's dining table, but Zoe could see her listening intently to every word, her small body tense with anticipation. "Should I call Detective Miller?" Zoe asked, her hand hovering over her phone. "Let's see what happens first," Grace said, ever practical, but her eyes held a similar tension. "But keep your phone ready." The decision was made for them when Robert's car suddenly screeched out of their driveway and pulled up in front of Grace's house. Emma looked up from her math homework as they heard his car door slam, the sound echoing ominously. "He found us," Emma said quietly, her voice tinged with a child's inevitable fear. The doorbell rang, followed immediately by pounding on the door. "Zoe, I know you're in there. Get out here right now." Grace looked at Zoe, her jaw set. "I'm calling the police." "Wait," Zoe said, surprising herself. A surge of unexpected strength, fueled by months of quiet suffering and Emma's bravery, coursed through her. "I want to face him. I want him to know that I know everything." "Mom!" Emma stood up, a worried crease on her forehead. "Are you sure?" Zoe looked at her daughter, this brave girl who had been protecting her while Zoe lived in fear. It was time for Zoe to protect Emma, to stand as a shield, to show her what true strength looked like. "I'm sure, but you stay inside with Grace." Zoe opened the front door to find Robert standing on the porch, his hair disheveled and his clothes wrinkled. He looked like he hadn't slept, and the smell of alcohol reached her from 3 feet away. "There you are." His voice was dangerous, controlled in the way that usually meant an explosion was imminent. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "I'm protecting my daughter," Zoe stated, her voice steady, despite the tremor in her hands. Robert's eyes narrowed. "Your daughter? Emma is my daughter too, and I want her home. Now." "She is home. She's safe, which is more than I can say for our house when you're in one of your moods." Robert stepped closer, and Zoe could see the fury building in his face, threatening to erupt. "You have no right to take her without telling me. No right to disappear like some kind of criminal." "Criminal?" Zoe almost laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "That's rich, Robert. Really rich." Something in her tone must have warned him, because his expression shifted slightly, a flicker of suspicion replacing pure rage. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I know about Stephanie." Robert's face went completely still. For just a moment, the mask slipped, and Zoe saw real fear in his eyes. Then the anger returned, stronger than before, a defensive shield against exposure. I don't know what you think you know, but I know about the divorce papers you've already prepared. I know about the boarding school applications for Emma. I know about the bank accounts you've been hiding money in. Zoe was surprised by how steady her voice sounded, a quiet power emanating from her newfound knowledge. I know about everything, Robert. You went through my office, he snarled. No longer a question, but a furious accusation. His hands clenched into fists. Your unlocked office with all your perfectly organized evidence of fraud and forgery. Robert's face went white. Fraud? The fake medical records were a nice touch. Dr. Harrison's office was very confused when I called to ask about my supposed depression treatment. Behind her, Zoe could hear Grace on the phone with the police, speaking in low, urgent tones. Robert heard it too, and his whole demeanor changed, panic replacing fury. Zoe, you don't understand. Everything I've done has been for our family, for Emma's future. You're sick. You need help. And I've been trying to stop. The word came out harder than Zoe intended. Just stop lying. I have recordings, Robert. Hours of recordings of you tearing me down, threatening me, planning to destroy my life. Recordings? His voice cracked slightly. That's when Emma appeared in the doorway behind Zoe, her tablet clutched in her small hands. Hi, Daddy. Robert's entire body went rigid. Emma, sweetheart, come to Daddy. We're going home right now. No, thank you, Emma said politely, as if declining a second helping of vegetables. I'm staying with Mom. Emma, you don't understand what's happening here. Your mother is sick and she's trying to poison your mind against me. Emma tilted her head, studying her father with those intelligent eyes. Daddy, do you remember what you said to Mom at Thanksgiving dinner? Emma, that's not... You called her worthless. You said she was nothing. You said I would be better off without her. Emma's voice was calm, matter of fact. Do you remember saying those things? Robert looked between Emma and Zoe could see him trying to calculate how much damage had been done, how much his carefully constructed facade had crumbled. Sometimes adults say things they don't mean when they're upset. But you did mean it, didn't you, Daddy? Emma held up her tablet. Because you said the same things the night before and the week before that, and lots of other times when you thought I was asleep. The color drained completely from Robert's face. Emma, what are you talking about? Emma looked directly at her father, and when she spoke, her voice carried a weight that no 9-year-old should have to bear. I have recordings of everything. Those 5 words hung in the air like a death sentence. Robert stared at Emma, then at the tablet in her hands, then back at Emma. Zoe watched as the full implications hit him, shattering his composure. You recorded me for 3 months, Emma said simply. Every time you were mean to Mom, every time you made her cry, every time you said things about making her go away. Robert's mouth opened and closed several times without sound. Zoe had never seen him speechless before, had never seen him look genuinely afraid. The man who had terrorized them for years was finally stripped bare, his power rendered impotent by the truth. Emma, sweetheart, you don't understand. I understand that you were planning to divorce Mom and send me to boarding school so you could marry Stephanie. Emma's voice was still unnaturally calm. I understand that you made fake papers, saying Mom was crazy. I understand that you've been stealing money from our family. Each word hit Robert like a physical blow. His face went from white to gray, and he had to grab the porch railing to steady himself. How much do you know? He whispered. Everything, Zoe answered for Emma. We know everything, Robert, and so does my lawyer, and so does Detective Miller from the DA's office. The sound of sirens was getting closer, growing louder. Robert heard them too, and raw panic flashed across his face. Zoe, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can fix our marriage. You don't want to destroy Emma's family over some misunderstanding. You already destroyed Emma's family, Zoe said quietly, her voice imbued with a steel she hadn't known she possessed. You destroyed it the first time you called me worthless in front of our daughter. You destroyed it when you decided I was disposable and started planning your new life with someone else. 2 police cars pulled up to the curb, flashing lights painting the street in red and blue. Robert looked at them, then back at Zoe and Emma, desperation replacing the control he usually wore like armor. "Emma, please. You're my little girl. You don't want to see Daddy get in trouble, do you?" Emma looked at her father for a long moment, her expression unreadable. When she finally spoke, her words were careful and precise. "I don't want you to get in trouble, Daddy, but I also don't want you to hurt Mom anymore, and I don't want you to take me away from her." Her simple, honest truth was more powerful than any legal argument. The officers were walking up the driveway now. Robert made one last futile attempt to regain control. "Officers, this is a family matter. My wife has taken my daughter without permission, and I just want—" "Mr. Thompson," the lead officer, Martinez, interrupted. "I'm Officer Martinez. We have a few questions for you." Robert's lawyer instincts kicked in. "I don't have to answer any questions without my attorney present." "That's your right, sir. But we do have a warrant to search your residence based on evidence of financial fraud and document forgery." Robert's last bit of composure cracked. "A warrant? Based on what evidence?" Officer Martinez looked at Emma and Zoe. "Based on evidence provided by your wife and daughter, sir." Zoe watched her husband, her soon-to-be ex-husband, realize that his carefully constructed plan, his entire edifice of lies, had fallen apart. The man who had controlled every aspect of their lives for years was no longer in control of anything. "Daddy?" Emma's small voice cut through the tension. "Are you going to say you're sorry?" Robert looked at his daughter, at this brave little girl who had outsmarted him, outmaneuvered him, and exposed him. For just a moment, Zoe thought she saw genuine remorse in his eyes. But then his face hardened again, the mask of pride and denial slamming back into place. "I have nothing to apologize for. I was protecting this family." Emma nodded sadly. "Okay, Daddy, I understand." But Zoe could see in her face that she didn't understand. She understood that her father had chosen pride over love, control over family, and revenge over redemption. As the officers escorted Robert to their car for questioning, Emma slipped her hand into Zoe's. "Mom, is it over?" Zoe squeezed her hand gently. "The hard part is just beginning, sweetie. But yes, I think the worst is over." Emma nodded and leaned against Zoe as they watched Robert's car disappear down the street. "I'm proud of us," she said quietly. "So was I," Zoe whispered. They had faced the monster, and for the first time, they had won. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Zoe was making breakfast for Emma at Grace's house when the doorbell rang. Through the window, she saw a silver Mercedes in the driveway, Robert's mother's car. "That's Grandma Patricia," Emma observed, looking up from her cereal. Zoe's stomach dropped. Patricia had always been polite but distant with her, clearly preferring her son's version of their marriage. Zoe assumed she was here to demand Emma's return home or to tell Zoe how she was destroying their family. This is a common pattern. The abuser's family often rationalizes or enables the behavior, creating an additional layer of isolation for the victim. Grace answered the door, and Zoe heard Patricia's crisp voice asking for her. When she entered the kitchen, Zoe braced herself for the confrontation. "Zoe, we need to talk." Patricia looked older than she had at Thanksgiving dinner, more fragile. Somehow she was still impeccably dressed, but there were dark circles under her eyes, betraying a sleepless night. "Mrs. Thompson, if you're here to convince me to go back to Robert," Zoe began, cutting her off. "I'm here to apologize." The words hit Zoe like cold water. Patricia never apologized for anything, least of all anything involving her precious son. "I'm sorry," Patricia said, sitting down across from Zoe at Grace's kitchen table, her composure cracking slightly. "I said I'm here to apologize for years of enabling my son's behavior, for not seeing what he was doing to you, for not speaking up when I should have." Emma stopped eating and stared at her grandmother, a quiet, wide-eyed witness to this unprecedented moment. This was not the Patricia any of them knew. "Mrs. Thompson, I don't understand." "After what happened at dinner, after the police came to question Robert yesterday, I started thinking about things I had ignored," Patricia explained, her hands trembling slightly. "Signs I had dismissed, conversations I had pretended not to hear." Grace discreetly moved to the living room, giving them privacy while staying close enough to help if needed. "What kind of signs?" Zoe asked carefully. Patricia was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands, grappling with years of suppressed guilt and denial. "Do you remember Robert's first marriage? To Jennifer?" Zoe nodded. Robert had been married briefly in his 20s, but he never talked about it beyond saying Jennifer had been unstable and couldn't handle being married to a successful man. This narrative, a common tactic of abusers, is designed to preemptively discredit former partners. "Jennifer called me once, about 6 months before their divorce." Patricia's voice was barely above a whisper. She was crying, saying Robert was cruel to her, that he was trying to make her feel crazy. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Robert did the same things to Jennifer that he did to Zoe. Worse, probably. Jennifer tried to tell me he was hiding money, forging documents, planning to leave her with nothing. I didn't believe her. Patricia looked up at Zoe with tears in her eyes. "She tried to warn me that Robert was dangerous, and I chose my son over the truth." This profound admission from Patricia highlights the deep-seated denial and complicity that can occur within families when faced with uncomfortable truths about a loved one's abusive behavior. Emma had stopped pretending to eat and was listening intently, her young mind grasping the gravity of the situation. "What happened to Jennifer, Grandma?" "She lost everything in the divorce. Robert convinced the judge she was mentally unstable, just like he was trying to do with your mother. Last I heard, she moved across the country and changed her name." The room was silent except for the ticking of Grace's kitchen clock. A tragic story, mirroring Zoe's own near fate, echoing a pattern of destruction spanning years. Patricia reached into her purse and pulled out a thick envelope. "These are bank statements and financial records from Robert's accounts, the ones he thought I didn't know about." Patricia's voice was steadier now, imbued with a newfound resolve. "I've been the backup contact on several of his business accounts for years. When I started looking more closely, I found evidence of the money he's been hiding from you." Zoe opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were statements showing hundreds of thousands of dollars in accounts she had never seen before. Money that should have been marital assets, hidden away where she couldn't access it. "Why are you giving me this?" Zoe asked, overwhelmed. Patricia was quiet for a moment, her gaze falling on Emma. "Because Emma shouldn't lose her mother the way Robert's first daughter lost hers." "Robert has another daughter?" Zoe asked, stunned. "Jennifer took their daughter when she fled. Robert hasn't seen her in 10 years. Patricia wiped her eyes with a tissue. "I have a granddaughter I've never met because I chose to believe my son's lies over a mother's desperate attempt to protect her child." Emma, with her characteristic empathy, reached across the table and took her grandmother's hand. "Grandma, you're helping us now. That matters." Patricia squeezed Emma's hand. "You're very wise for 9 years old." "I've had to grow up fast," Emma replied, her simple honesty seeming to break something inside Patricia. She started crying then, really crying, a release of years of suppressed guilt and pain. "I'm so sorry, Zoe. I'm sorry I didn't protect you. And I'm sorry I didn't protect Jennifer. I'm sorry I raised a son who thinks women are disposable." Zoe found herself reaching for Patricia's other hand, a bridge of understanding forming between them. "You can't change what Robert did, but you can help us make sure he doesn't get away with it." Patricia nodded, wiping her tears. "I'll testify in court if you need me to. I'll tell them about Jennifer, about the pattern of behavior, about the hidden money. Whatever you need." "Thank you," Zoe whispered, a wave of gratitude washing over her. "There's something else." Patricia pulled out another document. "Robert had a meeting with his lawyer yesterday morning before the police came. I know this because I pay the retainer for his legal services, and his attorney called to discuss strategy." Zoe's blood went cold. "What kind of strategy?" "He's planning to claim that you and Emma are lying about the abuse. He wants to say you coached Emma to make false accusations because you found out about his affair and want revenge." Emma's face hardened. "But we have recordings. How can he say we're lying when we have proof?" Patricia looked at her granddaughter with something that might have been pride. He's going to claim the recordings were edited or taken out of context. He's going to say you're a troubled child acting out because of your mother's mental illness. But that's not true, Emma protested. Truth doesn't always matter in court, sweetheart. What matters is what you can prove and how convincing your story is, Patricia explained, her voice tinged with the cynical wisdom of experience. But with my testimony about Jennifer and the financial records I'm giving you, his strategy becomes much harder to defend. Grace reappeared in the kitchen doorway. Zoe, your lawyer is on the phone. Zoe took the call in Grace's living room while Emma and Patricia continued talking quietly in the kitchen, a new bond forming between them. Angela had news about Robert's arrest. He's been charged with financial fraud, forgery of medical documents, and document fraud, Angela reported. He made bail this morning, but there's a restraining order in place. He can't contact you or Emma directly. What about custody? The judge granted temporary full custody to you based on the evidence of abuse and Robert's criminal charges. Emma won't be forced to see him until this is resolved. Relief flooded through Zoe, a sensation so profound it almost brought her to her knees. How long will that take? Depends on whether he takes a plea deal or fights the charges. But Zoe, there's something else. Detective Miller found evidence that Robert was planning to take Emma out of state next week. Fake enrollment papers, a lease on an apartment in North Carolina under an assumed name. Zoe's legs went weak. He was really going to kidnap her. It looks that way, which actually strengthens our case significantly. Flight risk with a minor child is a very serious charge. When Zoe returned to the kitchen, Patricia was showing Emma pictures on her phone. This is Jennifer's daughter, your half-sister. Her name is Rachel, and she's about 14 now. Emma studied the photo of a girl with Robert's dark hair and her mother's kind eyes. Do you think we'll ever meet her? Maybe someday, when all this is over and it's safe. Patricia looked at Zoe. Jennifer would want to know that another woman escaped before it was too late, that another little girl didn't lose her mother to Robert's cruelty. As Patricia prepared to leave, she pulled Zoe aside. Zoe, I know I don't have the right to ask this, but would you consider letting me stay in Emma's life? I know I failed as a mother-in-law, but I'd like to try to be a better grandmother. Zoe looked toward the kitchen where Emma was carefully packing the financial documents Patricia had brought. That's up to Emma. Emma, Zoe called. Grandma Patricia wants to know if you'd like her to keep visiting, even with everything that's happening with your father. Emma considered this seriously, her gaze unwavering as she looked at her grandmother. Grandma, do you believe that Daddy was mean to Mom? Yes, I do. And you believe that we're telling the truth about everything? Completely. Emma nodded. Then yes, I'd like you to keep visiting. Mom and I are going to need all the family we can get. Patricia's smile was the first genuine expression Zoe had ever seen on her face, bright with gratitude and hope. Thank you, Emma. I won't let you down again. After Patricia left, Emma and Zoe sat on Grace's couch, reviewing everything that had happened. In less than a week, their entire world had been turned upside down and then, miraculously, started to right itself. Mom, do you think Daddy will go to jail? Emma asked, her voice soft. I don't know, sweetie. Maybe. Emma was quiet for a moment. I hope he does. Not because I want him to be hurt, but because I want him to understand that what he did was really wrong. Zoe pulled her daughter closer. You know what I'm most proud of? What? That through all of this, you never stopped being kind. Even to Daddy, even when he was scary and mean, you never became cruel like him. Emma leaned against Zoe. I learned that from you, Mom. You were never mean to him either, even when he deserved it. As they sat there together, safe in Grace's house, with evidence that would protect them and allies who would support them, Zoe realized something important. Robert had spent years trying to break her down, trying to make her believe she was worthless and alone. But he had been wrong about both things. She wasn't worthless. She was raising an incredible daughter who was braver than Zoe had ever been. And she wasn't alone. She had people who cared about them and would fight for them. Robert's plan to destroy them had failed, and now it was time to build something better from the pieces. The journey of healing and reclaiming one's life after abuse is often about building a new foundation, not just on the absence of trauma, but on the presence of love, support, and self-worth. 2 days later, while Emma was at school, Zoe was at Grace's house organizing all their evidence when the doorbell rang. Through the window, she saw a woman she didn't recognize, young, blonde, expensively dressed, and clearly upset. Grace opened the door cautiously. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Zoe Thompson. I'm Stephanie Morrison." Zoe's blood ran cold. Robert's affair partner was standing on Grace's doorstep. "I'm Zoe," she said, stepping into view. "What do you want?" Stephanie looked like she had been crying. Her makeup was smeared, and her usually perfect hair was disheveled. "I need to talk to you, please. It's about Robert." Grace looked at Zoe questioningly. Zoe nodded. "Let her in." Stephanie sat down in Grace's living room, clutching her purse like a lifeline. "I know what you must think of me, and you have every right to hate me, but there are things you need to know about Robert that I just found out." "Such as?" Zoe asked, her voice carefully neutral. Stephanie took a shaky breath. "I thought I knew him. I thought you were the problem in his marriage, that you were the reason he was so unhappy. He told me you were mentally ill, that you were abusive to Emma, that you were trying to destroy his career." Despite everything, Zoe felt a stab of pain. "And you believed him. He was so convincing. He showed me medical records of your supposed treatment for severe depression. He played me recordings of phone calls where you sounded completely unstable." Stephanie's voice was getting smaller. "I thought I was helping him escape an abusive relationship." "What recordings?" Zoe asked sharply, her mind racing. "Conversations where you were screaming at him, threatening to hurt yourself, saying horrible things about Emma?" Stephanie looked confused. "But then yesterday, after he was arrested, I started really listening to those recordings and I realized they were edited." Grace leaned forward, a grim look on her face. "Edited how?" "Your voice was spliced together from different conversations. Parts were taken out of context, rearranged to make you sound crazy. Robert had manipulated the audio to create fake evidence of your instability." Zoe felt sick. "He made fake recordings of me?" "Professional quality editing. He must have recorded hundreds of your phone conversations over the years and then pieced together the worst moments to create something that sounded like you having a breakdown. The manipulation was so thorough, so calculated, that it took Zoe's breath away. It was a chilling example of how deeply an abuser will go to control the narrative and gaslight their victim, not just verbally, but through engineered evidence. "Why are you telling me this?" Zoe asked, trying to grasp the enormity of it all. Stephanie was crying now. "Because I found out I'm not the first." "What do you mean?" "Last night I got a call from a woman named Jennifer Walsh. She said she used to be married to Robert, and she had tracked me down to warn me." Stephanie wiped her eyes. "She told me everything, Zoe, about how Robert destroyed her life, took her daughter away, left her with nothing, and she told me about the other women." "Other women?" "After Jennifer, there were at least 3 other serious relationships. Robert would find successful, independent women, isolate them from their friends and family, convince them they were crazy, and then discard them when he found someone new." Stephanie's voice was hollow. "Jennifer called it his pattern." Grace brought Stephanie a box of tissues, her face grim. "What made you realize the truth?" Jennifer knew details about Robert that only someone who had lived with him would know. She knew about his fake medical records trick, about how he hides money, about how he uses children as weapons against their mothers. Stephanie blew her nose. "And then she told me about the investigation." "Investigation?" Zoe and Grace exclaimed simultaneously. "Jennifer has been working with a private investigator for years, documenting Robert's pattern of abuse and fraud. She's been trying to build a case that would hold up in court." Stephanie pulled out a thick folder. "She asked me to give you this." Inside the folder were photographs, financial documents, and sworn statements from 4 different women, all telling similar stories of manipulation, financial abuse, and systematic destruction of their reputations. "My God," Grace breathed, looking over Zoe's shoulder at the documents. This was not just Robert's cruelty. It was a decades-long pattern of serial predation. "Jennifer said Robert is a serial predator," Stephanie continued. He targets women with money or successful careers, manipulates them into marriage or serious relationships, and then systematically steals their assets while destroying their credibility. Zoe thought about Patricia's revelation, about Robert's first marriage, about the hidden bank accounts, about the forged medical records. It had been his entire adult life. Jennifer's daughter is 16 now. She hasn't seen her father since she was 6, but she still has nightmares about him. Stephanie's voice broke. When Jennifer heard about Emma, about what Robert was planning to do to your family, she knew she had to act. "Where's Jennifer now?" Zoe asked, a profound sense of sisterhood forming for this unknown woman. Living under a different name in Oregon, she's built a good life for herself and her daughter, but she's never stopped watching Robert, never stopped gathering evidence. She's been waiting for him to make a mistake big enough that the authorities would finally take him seriously. Grace was studying the documents. This is enough evidence to put Robert away for years. Jennifer wants to testify at his trial, so do 2 of the other women. Stephanie looked directly at Zoe. They want to make sure he never does this to another family. Zoe felt overwhelmed by the scope of Robert's deception, by the sheer evil of his calculated patterns. "Stephanie, why did you come forward? You could have just ended the relationship quietly." "Because I have a daughter too. She's 12, and she lives with her father in another state. When Jennifer told me what Robert does to children, how he uses them as weapons and turns them against their mothers," Stephanie's voice trailed off. "I realized I was about to become an accessory to child abuse." "What do you mean?" "Robert was planning to marry me as soon as your divorce was final. He was going to bring Emma to live with us, and he had already started telling me how troubled she was, how she needed firm discipline to overcome the damage you had done to her." Stephanie shuddered. "I thought he was being a concerned father. Now I realize he was setting up Emma to be his next victim." The thought of Emma being subjected to Robert's manipulation without Zoe there to protect her made Zoe physically ill. "There's something else," Stephanie said quietly, her voice barely a whisper, yet it held a chilling weight. "Robert has been planning this for over a year. He specifically targeted me because I have money and no family nearby. He needed someone financially stable who could help him raise Emma after he got rid of you." "Got rid of me?" Zoe's voice was hoarse. "He told me you would probably have a breakdown after losing custody of Emma. He said most women in your situation either disappear entirely or—" Stephanie couldn't finish the sentence. "Or what?" Zoe demanded, a cold dread seeping into her bones. "Or they hurt themselves. He said it was common for women to become suicidal when they lose everything." Stephanie's eyes were wide with horror, the full realization of Robert's depravity hitting her. "I think he was planning for you to die, Zoe. I think that was his ultimate goal." The room went completely silent. Grace reached for Zoe's hand, and Zoe could see the fear in her eyes. "He was going to kill me," Zoe whispered, the truth a chilling realization. "Not directly, but he was setting up a situation where you might kill yourself, and if that happened, he would get sympathy as the grieving widower, full custody of Emma, and access to any life insurance money." Zoe thought about all the times Robert had mentioned her life insurance policy, how he had increased the coverage just last year. She thought about the forged medical records showing severe depression, the systematic isolation from friends and family, the financial devastation he had planned. It would have looked like a tragic suicide, Zoe said slowly, the pieces fitting together in a horrifying puzzle. A mentally ill woman who lost her child and had nothing left to live for. Stephanie nodded miserably. And Emma would have grown up thinking her mother abandoned her. Robert would have made sure of that. Grace stood up abruptly. "We need to call Detective Miller right now." While Grace made the call, Stephanie turned to Zoe. "Zoe, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I helped him plan to destroy your life because I believed his lies. But I want to make this right." "How?" Zoe asked, looking into Stephanie's tear-filled eyes. "I'm going to testify against him. I'm going to tell the court about the fake recordings, about his long-term planning, about everything he told me regarding his intentions toward you and Emma." Stephanie's voice was firm now, imbued with a fierce determination. "And I'm going to make sure the other women know they have support if they want to come forward. This act of collective bravery of women coming together to expose a shared abuser is incredibly powerful. Detective Miller arrived within an hour, and Stephanie spent the rest of the afternoon giving her statement. By evening, the case against Robert had expanded exponentially, from simple financial fraud to conspiracy, attempted kidnapping, and potentially attempted murder. When Emma came home from school, Zoe had to decide how much to tell her about Stephanie's revelations. "Mom, you look scared," Emma observed, her perceptive eyes seeing straight through Zoe's attempts at composure. "Did something bad happen?" Zoe sat down beside her, taking her hand. "Something scary, but also something good. We learned that your father's crimes were much worse than we thought, but we also learned that there are other people who can help make sure he never hurts anyone again." Emma processed this with her usual serious expression. "Are we safer now, or in more danger?" "Safer. Much safer. Because now the police understand how dangerous your father really is." Emma nodded. "Good. I was worried he might try to take me away again." "That's never going to happen, sweetie. I promise." The simple promise, backed by the strength of newfound allies and undeniable evidence, felt like an unbreakable shield. That night, as Emma slept peacefully in Grace's guest room, Zoe lay awake, thinking about how close they had come to Robert's ultimate plan succeeding. If Emma hadn't been brave enough to record his abuse, if they hadn't found his evidence, if Stephanie hadn't realized the truth, if Jennifer hadn't been relentlessly building her own case, but they had found the truth. And now, Robert's decades-long pattern of destroying women's lives was finally going to be exposed. The man who had convinced Zoe she was worthless was about to discover that his own worth was less than nothing. Justice, Zoe realized, sometimes comes from the most unexpected places, often through the collective courage of those who refuse to be silenced. Robert's arrest came on a Tuesday morning, just as Emma was finishing her breakfast before school. They heard the sirens first, then saw the police cars pulling up to their house across the street. Through Grace's front window, they watched as Detective Miller and 3 other officers walked up to their front door. "Is that for Daddy?" Emma asked, peering through the curtains. "I think so, sweetie." Zoe's phone rang. It was Detective Miller, Mrs. "Thompson, we have a warrant for Robert's arrest on additional charges. Can you confirm he's at the residence?" "I can see his car in the driveway," Zoe replied, watching the scene unfold, her voice surprisingly steady. "What are the charges?" "Conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted kidnapping, child endangerment, and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. Based on Stephanie Morrison's testimony and the evidence from the other victims, the DA decided to move forward with the most serious charges." Through the window, Zoe saw Robert answer the door in his bathrobe, clearly having just woken up. Even from across the street, she could see his shock when Detective Miller showed him the warrant. "Mom, look at Daddy's face," Emma said quietly. Robert's expression had gone from confused to panicked in seconds. He was gesturing wildly, probably trying to convince the officers this was all a misunderstanding. But Detective Miller was calmly reading him his rights, while another officer moved to search the house. "Emma, how do you feel watching this?" Zoe asked, wanting to understand her daughter's emotional landscape. Emma was quiet for a long moment, studying her father's face as he was handcuffed. "Sad, but also relieved. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense," Zoe affirmed, a lump in her throat. "I love Daddy, but I'm glad he can't hurt us anymore." Emma turned away from the window, a palpable shift in her demeanor. "Can we go to school now? I have a math test today, and I don't want to be late." The resilience of children never ceased to amaze Zoe. While she was watching her husband get arrested and feeling like her whole world was crumbling and rebuilding simultaneously, Emma was worried about a math test. "Of course, sweetie, let's go." The ability of children to compartmentalize and move forward, even in the face of profound trauma, is a powerful testament to their adaptability and inherent drive towards normalcy. By the time they returned from dropping Emma at school, Robert's arrest was all over the local news. Grace had recorded the news segment, and they watched it together over coffee, a mixture of disbelief and grim satisfaction washing over them. Local real estate developer Robert Thompson was arrested this morning on charges including fraud, conspiracy, and attempted kidnapping, the reporter announced. Thompson is accused of systematically defrauding multiple romantic partners over a 15-year period, with losses estimated in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. The news report included interviews with Detective Miller and the prosecutor, both speaking about the sophisticated pattern of financial and emotional abuse that Robert had perpetrated against multiple victims across several states. This case represents a new understanding of domestic abuse, the prosecutor stated. The defendant didn't just steal money. He systematically destroyed women's reputations, relationships, and sense of reality in order to control and exploit them. Grace muted the television, the silence once again thick, but this time it was a silence of validation, not dread. "How does it feel to see it on the news?" Grace asked. "Surreal," Zoe admitted. "For so long, Robert convinced me that I was crazy, that I was imagining his abuse, that no one would believe me." She gestured at the TV. "Now it's being talked about as fact on the evening news." Her phone had been ringing all morning, reporters wanting interviews, neighbors expressing shock, and old friends who had distanced themselves from her during her marriage now calling to offer support, a testament to the power of public truth in dispelling the whispers of private doubt. Angela called with an update on the legal proceedings. Robert's bail has been set at $200,000. His mother has posted it, but there are strict conditions. He can't leave the state, can't contact you or Emma, and can't access any of the accounts that are part of the fraud investigation. "What happens next?" Zoe asked, eager for the next step towards finality. "His arraignment is next week. Based on the evidence we have, I expect him to be offered a plea deal. If he doesn't take it, this goes to trial, and with 4 victims willing to testify, plus all the documentary evidence, he's looking at serious prison time." That afternoon, Patricia called to check on them. She sounded exhausted, the weight of her son's crimes and her own complicity finally settling upon her. "I posted Robert's bail because he's still my son, but I want you to know that I don't support what he's done," she said, her voice heavy. "I've also hired him an attorney and told him his best option is to take whatever plea deal they offer." "How is he handling all this?" Zoe asked, half dreading the answer. "Badly. He's still claiming you and Emma are lying, that this is all an elaborate revenge plot because you found out about his affair." Patricia's voice was heavy with disappointment. Even with all the evidence, even with other victims coming forward, he refuses to admit he's done anything wrong. The enduring denial of an abuser, even when faced with irrefutable evidence, is a painful reality that victims often have to confront. "What about the financial accounts? Can I access our joint assets now?" Zoe asked, practicality reasserting itself. "The court has frozen everything until the criminal case is resolved, but your lawyer should be able to get you emergency support payments. I'm also prepared to help with expenses if you need it." The offer surprised Zoe. "Patricia, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. I have 2 granddaughters I've never been able to protect because of my son's actions. The least I can do is make sure Emma doesn't suffer financially while this gets sorted out." Patricia's journey from denial to acceptance, from complicity to atonement, was a powerful reminder that even in the darkest family dynamics, redemption is possible. 2 weeks later, Robert's plea hearing arrived. Emma had asked to stay home from school to hear the outcome, and Zoe decided she was old enough to understand what was happening, to witness the final unraveling of her father's lies. Angela called just after noon. "He took the plea deal." "What does that mean?" Zoe asked, her breath held tight. 5 years in federal prison for the financial crimes, plus 3 years for the conspiracy charges. "He'll serve at least 4 years before he's eligible for parole." Angela's voice carried a note of satisfaction. "He also has to pay full restitution to all victims and surrender any claimed marital assets. And custody? He's voluntarily terminating his parental rights. Emma will never be forced to see him again." Zoe felt like she could breathe freely for the first time in years, the weight of a decade of oppression lifting from her shoulders. It's really over. The criminal case is over, Angela confirmed. We still have to finalize the divorce and work out the financial settlement. But yes, Zoe, it's over. When Emma came home from school, Zoe told her about her father's plea agreement. So Daddy admitted he did bad things? She asked. Yes, he admitted to stealing money and lying about a lot of things. And he's going to jail? Yes, for several years. Emma nodded thoughtfully. Will he try to take me away when he gets out? No, sweetie. He signed papers saying he won't try to get custody of you. Legally, it will be just you and me from now on. Emma was quiet for a few minutes, processing this information, the profound implications of her future finally settling into place. Mom, can I ask you something? Anything? Do you think Daddy will ever say he's sorry? Really sorry, not just sorry he got caught? The question broke Zoe's heart, a poignant testament to a child's enduring need for validation and reconciliation. I don't know, Emma. I hope so for his sake, but whether he apologizes or not doesn't change anything for us. I know. I just think it would be nice if he understood how much he hurt us. That evening, Grace made a special dinner to celebrate what she called Freedom Day. As they sat around her dining table, the same table where they had spent so many evenings planning their legal strategy, Zoe realized that what had started as the worst day of her life, that Thanksgiving dinner, had led to the best outcome she could have imagined. Mom, Emma said as they were cleaning up dishes, I want to write a letter to Jennifer's daughter, Rachel. Why? Because she went through the same thing I did, but she didn't have recordings to help her mom. I want her to know that her daddy got in trouble for the bad things he did, and that someone believed her mom was telling the truth. Zoe hugged her daughter tightly. Even in the midst of their own trauma and recovery, Emma was thinking about how to help another child who had suffered because of Robert's actions. I think that's a beautiful idea, sweetie. As Zoe tucked Emma into bed that night in Grace's guest room, Emma looked up at her with those serious eyes that had seemed too much for a 9-year-old. Mom, are you happy now? Zoe considered the question carefully. I'm relieved, and I'm proud of us, and I'm hopeful about our future. Happy might take a little more time. Emma nodded. That makes sense. But we're safe now, right? We're completely safe now. Good. Then happy will come later. As Zoe turned off the light and headed toward her own room, she heard Emma's voice one more time in the darkness. Mom, I think we won. She was right. They had won. Not just the legal battle, but something much more important. They had won back their dignity, their safety, and their future. Robert had tried to destroy them, but instead, his own actions had destroyed him. Justice had finally arrived, and it looked exactly like a 9-year-old girl with a tablet full of truth. 6 weeks after Robert's sentencing, the ripple effects of their case were still spreading. Detective Miller called to update Zoe on the investigation that had grown far beyond their family. We've identified 7 additional victims spanning the last 20 years, he reported. Robert's pattern goes back much further than we initially thought. The scope of Robert's deception was staggering. Besides Jennifer and the other women Stephanie had told them about, investigators had found evidence of fraud against a college girlfriend, 2 business partners, and even an elderly neighbor who had trusted Robert to handle her investments. How much money are we talking about? Zoe asked, stunned by the sheer scale of his predation. Conservative estimate, over $2 million in stolen assets, plus immeasurable psychological damage. Detective Miller's voice was grim. Your husband was essentially running a decades-long con game, targeting vulnerable women and stealing their financial security. Emma was at school, which was good, because some of the details were too dark for her to hear. The investigators had discovered that Robert had been researching his victims carefully, choosing women who were isolated, financially successful, and emotionally vulnerable. This systematic targeting of specific profiles is a classic predatory tactic. There's something else you should know, Detective Miller continued, his voice lowering. We found evidence that Robert was planning to take out additional life insurance policies on you, with himself as the beneficiary. Zoe's blood went cold. How much? $5 million. The applications were already submitted, just waiting for your signature. According to his communications with Stephanie, he was planning to tell you it was for Emma's college fund. The manipulation was so thorough, so deeply calculated, it took Zoe's breath away. He really was planning to kill me. Not directly, but the evidence suggests he was creating conditions that might lead to your suicide. The fake medical records, the financial devastation, the loss of your child, it would have looked like a tragic but understandable breakdown. The full horror of Robert's ultimate plan to drive Zoe to suicide for financial gain and ultimate control was now laid bare. That afternoon, Zoe picked Emma up from school and took her for ice cream. Emma had been unusually quiet lately, and Zoe suspected she was processing everything that had happened in her own way, in her own time. "Mom, can I ask you something that might be weird?" Emma said, stirring her chocolate ice cream thoughtfully. "Of course, sweetie." "Do you think Daddy loved me, really loved me, not just wanted to own me?" The question hit Zoe hard, a profound, vulnerable inquiry from a child grappling with the complexities of twisted love. "Oh, Emma, that's not weird at all. That's a really important question." Emma looked up at Zoe with those wise eyes. "Because if he loved me, how could he plan to take me away from you? How could he want to hurt the person I love most?" Zoe chose her words carefully, aiming for honesty without poisoning Emma's memories unnecessarily. "I think your father loved the idea of you. He loved having a daughter who was smart and accomplished because it made him look good. But real love means wanting what's best for the person you love, even if it's not what you want." "So he didn't really love me?" Emma clarified, seeking a clear answer. "I think he loved you as much as he was capable of loving anyone. But your father has something wrong inside him that makes it hard for him to put other people's needs before his own wants." Emma nodded slowly, absorbing this complex truth. "That's sad for him." "It is sad for him, and it's why he's in prison now and why he'll probably be alone for the rest of his life." "I feel sorry for him sometimes," Emma admitted, a child's natural compassion shining through. "But I don't miss him. Is that bad?" "It's not bad at all, sweetie. You can feel sorry for someone who's made terrible choices without wanting them in your life." This conversation, born of pain, was also a testament to Emma's profound emotional intelligence and Zoe's dedication to fostering a healthy understanding of human relationships. That evening, Angela called with the final details of their divorce settlement. With Robert's criminal conviction, the financial aspects had been resolved quickly, leaving no room for further manipulation. "You're getting the house, Emma's college fund, and half of all legitimate marital assets," Angela reported, "plus restitution for the money he stole, which should be substantial once they liquidate his hidden accounts. What about his business? Being sold to pay back his victims? You'll receive a significant portion of those proceeds as well." Angela's voice carried a note of satisfaction, the sound of justice finally being served. "Financially, you and Emma will be very comfortable, and custody is completely resolved. Robert has no parental rights whatsoever. He cannot contact Emma, attend her school events, or make any decisions about her welfare. For all legal purposes, you are Emma's only parent." After Zoe hung up, she found Emma in the living room doing homework. She looked up as Zoe sat down beside her. "Was that about the divorce stuff?" "Yes, it's all finished now. The house is ours. You'll have money for college, and your father can never try to take you away from me." Emma put down her pencil, a slow smile spreading across her face. "So, we can go home?" They had been staying with Grace for almost 2 months, and while her family had been incredibly generous, Zoe knew Emma missed her own room, her own space. "If you want to, how would you feel about living in the house again?" Emma considered this seriously. "Will it feel different now that Daddy's gone?" "I think it will feel much more peaceful then." "Yes, I want to go home." "But Mom, what, sweetie? Can we redecorate Daddy's office? Maybe make it into something happier?" Zoe smiled, a genuine, joyful smile. "What did you have in mind?" "An art studio for both of us, somewhere we can create beautiful things instead of hiding scary things." The wisdom of her 9-year-old daughter never ceased to amaze Zoe. "I think that's a perfect idea." The transformation of a space of fear and deceit into one of creativity and joy was a powerful symbol of their new beginning. 2 weeks later, they moved back into their house. Emma was right. It felt completely different. The tension that had permeated every room was gone, replaced by a sense of peace Zoe hadn't felt in years. They started with Robert's office, removing his imposing desk and filing cabinets, painting the walls a sunny yellow, and setting up easels and art supplies. Within days, the room that had been the center of Robert's criminal planning became a vibrant space of creativity and joy, a living testament to their resilience. "Look what I made," Emma said one afternoon, showing Zoe a painting of their house with bright flowers in the yard and 2 stick figures of mother and daughter holding hands in front of it. "It's beautiful, Emma. I'm going to make one for Rachel, too, so she can see that sometimes houses can be happy again after bad daddies leave." Emma's empathy, extending to her half-sister, was deeply moving. That evening, as Zoe was cleaning up their art supplies, Emma appeared in the doorway with her tablet. "Mom, I want to show you something." She had been working on a video project for the past few weeks, and Zoe hadn't seen the final result. "It's called How to Be Brave When Someone You Love Is Being Hurt," Emma explained as she started the video. On the screen, Emma's face appeared, serious, confident, a small but powerful presence. "Hi, my name is Emma, and I'm 9 years old. I made this video for other kids who might be watching someone they love get hurt by someone else they love." The video continued with Emma explaining, in age-appropriate terms, how she had recognized that her father was hurting her mother, how she had decided to gather evidence, and how she had found the courage to stand up for what was right. "The most important thing to remember," Emma said in the video, her voice clear and earnest, "is that it's never the kid's fault when adults do bad things, and it's never the mom's fault either, even if the bad person tries to say it is." Zoe watched through tears as her daughter shared her story with wisdom and compassion that seemed impossible for someone so young. "Sometimes being brave isn't about fighting or being loud," Emma continued. "Sometimes being brave is about paying attention, gathering evidence, and waiting for the right moment to speak up. And sometimes being brave is about protecting someone even when you're scared." The video ended with Emma holding up a drawing of a house with 2 stick figures. "This is me and my mom now. We're safe and we're happy, and the person who is hurting us can't hurt us anymore. If you're watching this because someone you love is being hurt, just remember there are people who will help you if you ask. You just have to be brave enough to tell the truth." Zoe pulled Emma into a hug. "That's incredible, sweetie. What are you going to do with it?" "I want to put it online so other kids can see it. Detective Miller said there are lots of families like ours, and maybe my video could help them." "Are you sure you want to share your story with the world?" Zoe asked, wanting to ensure Emma understood the implications. Emma nodded firmly. "Daddy tried to make us disappear, but we didn't disappear. We won. And if our story can help other people win too, then I want to share it." That night, after Emma was asleep, Zoe sat in their new art studio, looking at all the paintings and drawings they had created together. Bright, hopeful images of their life moving forward. Evidence of healing and growth and possibility. On the wall, Emma had hung a photo of the 2 of them taken the day Robert was sentenced. They were standing on the courthouse steps, holding hands, smiling with relief and hope. Next to it, she had written in her careful 9-year-old handwriting, "The truth wins." She was right. The truth had won. Robert's elaborate lies and manipulations had crumbled when faced with simple, honest evidence of his actions. His attempt to destroy them had instead revealed his own destruction. But more than that, they had won something Robert never understood. They had won back their voices, their strength, and their future. They had proven that love is stronger than control, that truth is more powerful than manipulation, and that sometimes the smallest person in the room can be the bravest. As Zoe turned off the lights in their happy, peaceful house, she realized that Robert had been wrong about everything. She wasn't worthless. She was a mother raising a daughter who would change the world. They weren't weak. They were stronger than he had ever been. And they weren't alone. They had each other. And that was everything. 6 months after Robert's sentencing, Emma and Zoe had built a life that felt completely their own. The house was filled with laughter, art projects, and the kind of peaceful routine that Zoe had forgotten was possible. Emma's video had been viewed over 1 million times and had prompted dozens of families to seek help for domestic abuse situations, a powerful testament to the ripple effect of courage. "Mom, someone wants to interview us for a magazine," Emma announced one morning, reading through emails on her tablet. Since the video went viral, she had become something of an advocate for children in abusive situations, always with Zoe's supervision and approval. "What kind of magazine?" Zoe asked, a smile on her face. "Family Circle. They want to write about how families can rebuild after domestic abuse." Emma looked up at Zoe. "Should we do it? What do you think?" Emma considered this seriously. "I think yes, but only if we can talk about how good our life is now, not just about the bad stuff that happened." That afternoon, while Emma was at soccer practice, Zoe met Grace for coffee to catch up. Grace had been her anchor through everything, and their friendship had deepened beyond anything Zoe could have imagined. "You look happy," Grace observed, studying Zoe's face across the coffee shop. "I feel happy, really happy for the first time in years." "Any particular reason for the glow?" Grace grinned mischievously. Zoe felt her cheeks warm. "Maybe. Tell me everything." 2 weeks earlier, Zoe had run into Dr. James Mitchell at Emma's school during a parent-teacher conference. James was a single father whose daughter, Sophie, was in Emma's class, and they had talked briefly at a few school events. He was kind, funny, and treated Emma with the same respect he showed adults. "We've been on 3 dates," Zoe admitted. "Coffee, dinner, and a trip to the art museum with both girls. And it's nice to be with someone who asks about my day because he actually wants to know the answer, not because he's looking for ways to criticize me." Grace reached across the table to squeeze Zoe's hand. "I'm so happy for you, Zoe. You deserve someone who sees how amazing you are." It's early still, but Emma likes him, and his daughter Sophie is sweet. They've become good friends. "How does Emma feel about you dating?" Grace asked, always attuned to Emma's well-being. She said, and I quote, "Mom, you smile differently when Dr. Mitchell is around, and I like your happy smile better than your worried smile." That evening, James came over for dinner, their first time cooking together. Emma and Sophie had planned the entire menu, which consisted of spaghetti, garlic bread, and a chocolate cake they had made themselves, a chaotic but joyful culinary adventure. "Emma told me about your art studio," James said as they cleaned up dishes while the girls worked on homework at the kitchen table. "Could I see it?" Zoe led him upstairs to the room that had once been Robert's office. The transformation was complete now. Bright walls covered with Emma's artwork and Zoe's own paintings, easels positioned to catch the best light, shelves lined with art supplies and inspiration books. "This is incredible," James said, studying Emma's latest painting, a vibrant portrait of their chosen family that included Grace, Patricia, and even Detective Miller. "Emma's really talented." "She gets it from her mom," Emma called from downstairs, making them both laugh. James picked up one of Zoe's paintings, a landscape of the lake where Emma and Zoe had taken their first vacation as a family of 2. "You're both incredibly creative. This is beautiful, Zoe." The way he said her name, with genuine appreciation and warmth, reminded Zoe how different it felt to be seen and valued rather than criticized and controlled. "Thank you. Painting has been part of my healing process." Emma told Sophie that art helped you both process everything that happened. "That's remarkable." "Emma's the remarkable one. She saved us both." James turned to study a series of paintings Zoe had done, showing their journey from fear to freedom. "You saved each other. That's what families do." His simple words resonated deeply, confirming the truth of their shared journey. That night, after James and Sophie had gone home and Emma was in bed, Zoe sat in the art studio working on a new painting. This one showed Emma and Zoe standing in a field of sunflowers, their faces turned toward the sun, a symbol of hope and growth. "Mom!" Emma appeared in the doorway in her pajamas. "Can I talk to you?" "Of course, sweetie. Come here." Emma curled up in the chair next to Zoe's easel. I really like Dr. Mitchell. I like him too, and I think he really likes you. Not just pretend likes you to get something he wants, but really likes who you are. The maturity in Emma's observation took Zoe's breath away. What makes you think that? Because he listens when you talk, and he asked me what my favorite thing about you was, not what I thought he wanted to hear. What did you tell him? Emma grinned. I told him that you're brave even when you're scared, and you always choose love over anger, and you make the best pancakes in the world. And what did he say? He said I was lucky to have such a wise and strong mom, and that he could tell just by watching us together how much you love me. Zoe pulled Emma into a hug. Do you think you'd be okay if Dr. Mitchell and I keep dating? If eventually he and Sophie become a bigger part of our family? Emma was quiet for a moment, thinking deeply. Mom, for a long time it was just you and me against Daddy's meanness. Now it's just you and me choosing happiness. If Dr. Mitchell and Sophie want to choose happiness with us, I think that could be really nice. What if things don't work out with James? Zoe asked, acknowledging the uncertainties of life. Then it will still be you and me choosing happiness. That part doesn't change. Emma's unwavering faith in their core bond was a testament to the strength of the foundation they had built together. The next morning brought a call from Detective Miller with news about Robert's situation in prison. He's been moved to protective custody, Detective Miller reported. Apparently, word got around about his crimes against children, and other inmates weren't very welcoming. Is he safe? Zoe asked, a strange mix of concern and detached satisfaction in her voice. Safe, but isolated. He's spending most of his time in his cell, and his requests for early parole have been denied. How much longer will he be in prison? At least 3 more years, possibly longer, depending on his behavior. But Zoe, there's something else. He's been asking to write a letter to Emma. Zoe's protective instincts flared immediately. Absolutely not. I told him you'd say that, but I wanted you to know he's asking. He claims he wants to apologize. Even if that were true, Emma doesn't need his apology. She's moved on. I agree. I'll make sure he understands that any attempt to contact Emma will result in additional charges. That afternoon, Zoe told Emma about Robert's request. She listened thoughtfully. What do you think he would say in a letter? She asked. I don't know, sweetie. Maybe he'd try to apologize. Or maybe he'd try to manipulate you into feeling sorry for him. Emma nodded. I don't need him to say sorry to know that what he did was wrong. And I don't need to forgive him to be happy. You're absolutely right. Besides, Emma added with a grin, I'm too busy being happy to spend time thinking about Daddy's problems. She was right. Their life was full of good things now. Emma's art competitions, Zoe's freelance marketing work, dinners with James and Sophie, weekend trips with Grace's family, and quiet evenings in their peaceful home. A month later, Emma's story was featured in Family Circle magazine. The article, titled Brave at 9, How One Girl's Courage Saved Her Family, included photos of their art studio, Emma's tablet with her evidence folders, and the two of them working on a painting together. The response was overwhelming. Letters poured in from families around the country, thanking Emma for her courage and sharing their own stories of survival. Social workers contacted them, asking if Emma would be willing to speak to other children in similar situations. I want to help, Emma told Zoe as they read through the letters, but I also want to stay a normal kid who goes to school and plays soccer and makes art. We'll find the right balance, Zoe promised, dedicated to protecting Emma's childhood while fostering her compassionate spirit. The magazine article caught the attention of a publisher who wanted to turn Emma's story into a children's book about recognizing abuse and finding help. Emma was excited about the project but insisted on one condition. I want to donate some of the money to help other kids whose parents can't afford lawyers, she said, because everyone deserves to be safe, not just people who have enough money to fight back. As Zoe watched her daughter negotiate with publishers and plan her charitable giving, she marveled at the young woman Emma was becoming. Robert had tried to use her as a weapon against Zoe, but instead she had become a force for good in the world, a beacon of hope for countless others. 6 months later, James asked Emma's permission to propose to Zoe. She gave him not only her blessing, but also advice on what kind of ring Zoe would like, and suggestions for the perfect proposal location. He proposed in their art studio, surrounded by all the paintings that told the story of their healing and growth, a space once filled with shadows, now bathed in light. Emma and Sophie hid outside the door and cheered when Zoe said yes. "Are you ready to be part of a bigger family?" Zoe asked Emma later as they planned their small wedding. "Mom, we've been building our family all along. Grace and her kids, Patricia, Detective Miller, Angela, even Stephanie. They're all part of our family because they chose to love and protect us." Emma smiled. James and Sophie are just making it official. Their wedding was held in the backyard of their house, surrounded by sunflowers and all the people who had helped them survive and thrive. Emma was Zoe's maid of honor. And Sophie was James's best man. Grace officiated the ceremony, and Patricia cried happy tears while Detective Miller took photos, a celebration of resilience, love, and community. During the reception, Emma stood up to make a toast. "When I was little, I thought families were just people who lived in the same house," she said, her voice clear and confident. "But I learned that real families are people who protect each other, who choose love over fear, and who help each other be brave when scary things happen." She raised her glass of sparkling cider. "Mom taught me that we can choose our own happiness, even when other people try to choose sadness for us. James and Sophie chose to be part of our happiness. So here's to families that we build with love, instead of families that hurt us with fear." As everyone raised their glasses, Zoe looked around at all the faces of people who had stood by them, fought for them, and celebrated their victory over Robert's cruelty. Emma was right. They had built their own family based on love, support, and mutual respect, a testament to the transformative power of chosen connections. That night, as James and Zoe danced in their living room while Emma and Sophie painted wedding portraits at the kitchen table, Zoe realized something profound. Robert had spent years trying to convince her that she was nothing, that she had nothing to offer the world. But looking at the life Emma and Zoe had built from the ashes of his destruction, Zoe knew the truth. They weren't nothing. They were everything. They were proof that love is stronger than hate, that truth is more powerful than lies, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, thriving beyond the shadows of abuse. Robert was alone in a prison cell, having lost everything he thought mattered: his money, his reputation, his control over others. Meanwhile, Emma and Zoe were surrounded by people who loved them for exactly who they were. In the end, they hadn't just survived Robert's attempt to destroy them. They had thrived beyond anything he could have imagined, crafting a future filled with joy, purpose, and profound connection. And that, Zoe realized, was the sweetest victory of all. The final lesson is clear. Even in the darkest valleys of manipulation and abuse, the light of truth, fueled by courage and supported by community, can not only lead to freedom, but can also ignite a powerful journey of healing, growth, and the creation of a life more beautiful and authentic than ever before.